Hi, friends. Thank you so much for coming back to Reluctant Retiree. Today, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to read you a story I wrote about my dog named Jax, and he passed away last year, and I really, really miss him. Any of you have lost a pet over the years, or even recently, you know what I'm talking about. And before I start the story, I do want to just touch on grief for a moment. You know, we've all have years on us, and we all have experienced grief in some form or another. And you're all probably familiar with the 5 stages of grief. And last year I ran across a gentleman called by the name of David Kessler. He's done extensive work in the field of grief for many, many decades. He came out with a new book last year, and he added a 6th stage of grief, which is called meaning. And I think it's very, very appropriate to mention that because that's what the story is about. So without any further ado, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to put my reading glasses on because you know I am 79 years old and I'm visually impaired. So we're going to get started here, and I'm going to try to get through this without crying. So the name of my story is What I Learned from a Dog No One Wanted. I first met Jax on the internet. The headline above his picture read, "Please adopt Jax, a 3-year-old Jack Russell mix. He's scheduled to be euthanized in just a few days, and so will someone please come to his rescue and give him a new home." Could that person be you? Well, why not me? I asked myself as I impulsively but instinctively grabbed my truck keys and drove to the shelter where Jax was waiting. He had been incarcerated for many, many days, and I know that he was ready to come out. I had been dogless for much too long, so since my dog Peppermint had died, I had not found a way to attach my heart to another dog leash. Because I lived alone and there was no one to care for but myself, I knew Jax would not only be a welcome roommate, but he would certainly be a great addition to my sparsely filled social calendar. I was already imagining taking Jax for walks around the farm and shopping for his favorite food, and I wondered, would he like beef or would he like chicken? Probably neither. I knew from experience that leftovers from my plate had always been the favorite food of choice for every dog that I had ever owned. Of course, I imagined the exhilarating fun of teaching him tricks for treats as we settled into a new life together. However, I did not know that Jax was going to become the teacher and I was going to be the student as we made our way through the next decade. The shelter was closed when I arrived, so I waited patiently for the 12:30 opening. It was it seemed the longer I waited, the greater my anticipation. When the doors clicked open, I was the first to walk in and announced to an efficient looking receptionist that I was there to take Jax home. She greeted my remark with a kind but cautious question. "Have you met Jax?" she said. "Well, no, I just saw him on my computer this morning and I would like to come and adopt, and I'm here to adopt him and I would like to take him home." Well, our policy is to disclose everything about an animal before an adoption is approved, she said, and I must tell you that Jax has quite a history. She sounded almost apologetic, as if he was some sort of canine assassin. "Well, what kind of history?" I asked, I was ready to jump to his defense, even though I had never met him. Well, let me get his file. Why don't you just take a seat over there in the first cubicle, she said, directing me to a small table with two brightly painted chairs depicting animals of every breed and every stance. When she finally got to the table, she sat down with a stack of papers that apparently was outlining his prior offenses, and it appeared that he had quite a rap sheet. Let's see, she said. Jax came to our shelter first from a recent college graduate who had accepted a job in another state and could not take the dog with him. Well, that made sense to me, I thought. Maybe this is not going to be as hard as I was beginning to anticipate. Well, I assure you that I have no intention of moving, and I am not coming out of retirement, I said, just in case she thought I might be some kind of vagabond. Well, unimpressed, she continued. Next, he was adopted by a gentleman here in town who wanted to surprise his wife with a little dog, but she hated him. He returned the next day with dog in hand and said, I have to return Jax because my wife does not like him. Well, I must say at this point I was beginning to relax a little bit because I had not heard anything so far that might suggest that Jax would attack me in the middle of the night. Oh, I love all dogs, I said. I have never met a dog I did not like. Well, without any acknowledgement of my eagerness to settle this matter and take my new friend home, she continued to disclose the official documentation about this dog's previous offenses. Okay, his next owner was a man looking for a dog for his two young children. And when he came in, he thought that Jax would be the perfect little dog because his kids were little, Jax was little, and he thought they could grow up together. Well, that made sense to me, I thought. What was the problem, I wondered. At which time, as if she's reading my mind, she said, well, he did not play well with children. Well, at this point, I was beginning to feel confident that Jax was going to go home with me, and I stated my case. I said, well, I don't have any children. I don't plan to have any children, so that's not going to be a problem for me. At this point, she flipped a page and said, well, there's one more thing. We let a gentleman adopt Jax because his wife wanted a companion for her cat. So the gentleman took Jax home. Next morning was at the door here at the shelter and said, I have to return Jax. He does not like cats. Oh, well, I don't have any cats, I said. That's not going to be a problem for me. With a look of total surrender, she closed her files, stood up and said, okay, let's go meet Jax. Well, not ever having encountered an adoption center or a shelter, I was not really familiar with the procedure. However, before I could go into the visitor center, and the visiting room rather, I had to dress in a white disposable gown with booties to match before I could ever enter the room. No sooner had I taken a seat Then Jax bounced in, dragging a young volunteer struggling to hold his trailing leash. His black and white markings were distinctive. His tail wagged faster than a flag in a windstorm, and his tongue protruded excitedly from his mouth. He was already feeling the taste of freedom, and when he jumped on my lap, it was obvious he was ready to bust out of the joint. Well, since that day, 14 years ago, time seems to have evaporated, and through those years, Jax had quite a life. He visited 49 states in our motorhome. He made friends in every campground we chose. He frolicked along the Florida beaches and ate Indian bread in New Mexico. He chased squirrels in a Virginia campground and gulped fresh milk from a California dairy. When our traveling days were over, he settled into a calm, serene life here on the farm until he passed away in 2025. He was laid to rest in a sunny patch of land close to my bedroom, where I feel his presence every day. As I mourn his loss, I realize that among the many lessons that Jax taught me, the one I carry with me daily is that rejection by others does not mean that we are unlovable and that we have no true place in the world. Sometimes it becomes a struggle to find our place among like-minded people, but when we do, they become our tribe. That is when we can comfortably settle into our own skin and find it easy to love others as they love us. Now that's what I call a truly authentic life. And it was a beautiful lesson to learn from a dog that didn't seem to fit anywhere until we met on that fateful day. What a life lesson to learn from a dog that no one wanted. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed my story. If you have any comments below about a favorite pet that you had that perhaps you no longer have, is with you except in your heart, please leave a comment below. If you've not subscribed here to our channel, I invite you to do so today. And if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. Remember that our motto here on The Reluctant Retiree is that we do all we can for as many as we can for as long as we can. So I hope you remember that as you go into your next week, and I'll see you next week. Okay, bye-bye.